Would the members who have remaining questions please document them and submit them for response from the Minister? House Leader, I believe.
Madam Speaker.
House Leader. House Leader.
On a point of order. On a point of order, Madam Speaker. On a point of order. Standing Order 11A. 3. Any member may pose questions on a statement by a minister in accordance with Standing Order 17.2. 17.2 speaks to relevance of the question the statement asks. Madam Speaker.
You may sit, member. You may sit, member.
Madam Speaker, I think the member fails to
He's misguided.
point out
He's misguided.
that Section 17 does in fact reserve the discretion of the Speaker as the guide by which the question and answer period. And if you notice, the Speaker was very clear in indicating that the period had expired, and if members have further questions, then they can then table those questions in the normal way. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I have one question that I want to ask the Minister, and then, given the posture being taken, I will discontinue this. I want to ask one question.
Leader, no, hold a moment. If that is, then that would be the end of. Yes, that would be the end of your question and answer session as previously ruled.
I have one question which I would like to ask the Minister.
No.
Minister, you have indicated in your statement
Leader,
that the plan involved discontinuing. Your mic is not working, ma'am. I'm not hearing what you're saying.
Opposition Leader, respectfully, the time for asking questions is finished. I have already ruled. I'm asking that all additional questions be submitted to the Minister for his response. Opposition Leader. That's it.
Madam Speaker,
House Leader.
No, this cannot
House
be.
Leader. I have already ruled.
Madam Speaker,
House
on
Leader.
what basis?
House Leader.
Madam Speaker, I want to understand on what basis a time has been set. What's the time that the Speaker had established for this period? Because this matter is one of national importance, and it can't be left to the Speaker's sole discretion. I think the Speaker has to take into account what is happening. And there's one question that the leader wishes to ask. There's another question to be asked.
Madam Speaker, I think the member, in all fairness, cannot seek in any respect to define what the discretion of the Speaker of the House should be, nor indeed the timelines. In fact, it is fair to say that a substantial portion of time has been dedicated to this statement by the Minister. And in keeping with how the House must move forward, we have another statement to be made by the Prime Minister, and that represents only item 2 on the order paper. So, Madam Speaker, I do appreciate the ruling that you have made, and I urge the House in the normal and respected tradition of the Westminster system to respect the ruling of the Speaker of the House. Please.
Madam Speaker, I asked one question and I was not given a response to it. And I have another question which I would like to ask. I don't see on what basis it can be reasonable to deprive the Leader of the Opposition of the right to ask that question. I don't see on what basis. Whatever the howling may be on that side, it's a simple matter. I have a question to ask on a matter of national importance, and I'm asking that you allow it in your discretion.
So, Opposition Leader, I have already ruled as it relates to the closure of this segment. There is more than that. Because I respect you as Opposition Leader, I ensured when I heard very quietly over there that you wanted to ask a question or more than one, you were given the opportunity to do so, and the minister answered as well. The minister has answered, and I'm saying I have already ruled. Please respect the position of the Speaker in this regard and allow any additional questions you have to be posed to the minister. House Leader, could you indicate in respect of statement by minister whether we continue with the Minister of Health or the Prime Minister?
No, Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the Prime Minister be asked to make his statement at this time. May it please the Honourable Speaker.
We will now have statement by our Prime Minister, Most Honourable Andrew Holness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the orderly conduct of the business of the House. Madam Speaker, I spoke to this Honourable House on September 27th following the passage of Tropical Storm Ian. At that time, I indicated to the country what the preliminary assessments were in terms of damage to infrastructure. I also promised to have a report to this House for the final cost estimates in respect of the tropical storm. Madam Speaker, Tropical Storm Lisa has passed us by. And we are eternally grateful that once again, as a country, we have been spared and benefited from God's mercy. Madam Speaker, several communities, especially within the parishes of St. Catherine and Clarendon, were impacted by flood rains from Tropical Storm Ian. There were reports of damage to roads to varying degrees, especially in low-lying areas. Some 47 roads were badly affected by landslides, mud flows, down trees, or inundation, which rendered some communities inaccessible or marooned. I can report, Madam Speaker, that all roads are fully reopened with the exception of Lower Chapelton to Rock River corridor, where a breakaway occurred at Sutton in Clarendon. The National Works Agency's first step in response to the impact of all the flood rain events was to achieve clearance of affected corridors. The works to achieve this were undertaken by private contractors who are party to the agency's framework agreement, which speaks to the application of preset rates for the engagement of different types of equipment in carrying out road clearance works. Madam Speaker, the estimates for the flood damage have been finalized. Detailed designs are being done for retaining walls and pavement repairs. I will now provide preliminary estimates to undertake the remedial works as well as the proposed permanent works. Madam Speaker, the total cost resulting from damage to the road network by Tropical Storm Ian is 889 million Jamaican dollars, and it is broken down as follows. One, the cost to reopen the affected works and improve the drivability of the roadways is estimated at $359 million, and the cost to undertake permanent works, primarily retaining walls, drainage structures, and so forth, is estimated at $530 million. Madam Speaker, it is recognized that the country's fiscal situation will not allow for all the required works to be implemented immediately. Accordingly, the government is proposing a program of targeted interventions with priority rankings as follows. As I've said already, we're focusing on reopening block roads, which we have essentially achieved, cleaning of critical drains, which are now heavily silted, patching of main thoroughfares, which have been scarred, and the construction of new structures, retaining walls, river trading, etc., as funds become available. I have instructed that the NWA works with all related entities, including the municipal corporations, in finalizing the detailed designs and final estimates for the significant repair works which we will have to undertake. Madam Speaker, the cost accrued on a parish basis is as follows. For St. Thomas, for both cost of reopening roads and permanent restoration works, $59.1 million. For Kingston, $17.75 million. For St. Andrew, and this is now would be rural St. Andrew, east and west. I'm seeing here this figure, $5 million, but I will check that with the NWA. That doesn't sound correct. That must be an error. I will.
Madam Speaker, we still have not received a copy.
It's a copy across to you with the marshal. I'm not sure what happened to it. You can give me my copy. It's okay.
No, but just.
It was handed to
Oh, you didn't get one? Oh, my apologies. We sent them over. I'll have that figure checked, particularly since the Speaker may have an interest in East and West. For St. Catherine, 73.95 million. For Clarendon, which has the brunt of the damage, 649.7 million. For Manchester, 3 million. For St. Elizabeth, 26 million. For Westmoreland, 1.4 million. Hanover, 2.9 million. St. James, 16.7 million. Trelawney, 29.5 million. St. Anne and St. Mary, negligible. Portland, 1.9 million. Now, just to be clear on this, members, these would be the assessment of roads and infrastructure, other infrastructure damaged as a result of Tropical Storm Ian. So it's quite likely that some parishes had no impact, and that is why the figures are so low. This is specifically now related to the damage as a result of the weather conditions precipitated by Tropical Storm Ian. Madam Speaker, I know that this situation will add further pressure to our resources. But our resolve as a government is strong. Our resolve as a government to ensure that we maintain, improve, and build resilient infrastructure is strong and unquestionable. I ask every Jamaican who now has to use our roadways, especially those roadways that are in less than favorable conditions, to bear with the government as we work to improve our economy, as we have been doing, as we work to grow our economy, as we have been doing. As we have been doing by better management of the economy, we have been able to increase our public revenues. And as we increase our public revenues, so too we will increase the amount that we allocate to not just wages, which are important, to not just the recurrent expenditures, which are important, but to the capital expenditure on our roads and infrastructure. We cannot, Madam Speaker, do it all at once. We cannot snap our fingers and fix all the roads that are bad. But I want every Jamaican to understand and appreciate that this government will place this country, will place our economy in a position where we will be able to repair their roads, their bridges, their drains. And Madam Speaker, we have put ourselves now in a position where we will be making increased allocations to repair particularly our rural roads and our secondary roads. Madam Speaker, there is no question, and we don't hear any quarrels in the society about the government's program of building highways and major roads to increase connectivity. No other government has done what we have done in that regard. But we agree that development has to be even. Development has to be equitable. And we know that the members of parliament are feeling the pressure in urban and rural areas, all over. As an urban MP, who travels the entire island, I know that the pressure is all over. Last week, I was in St. Thomas. And, Madam Speaker, I drove almost the entire stretch. I've driven it now 3 or 4 times, just observing what is happening. And the work is not progressing as I would like. But, Madam Speaker, it is a very ambitious undertaking. Regardless of the criticisms that are leveled at the project, it is an ambitious undertaking to do a road like that, spanning 3 parishes in very difficult terrain. Madam Speaker, we could have chosen to do it piece by piece, and it would have taken us maybe 5 or 6 years. Right, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, we will finish this project in good time. But it is important in the interim to also acknowledge that the citizens, especially those who are resident in proximity to the works, they have a genuine complaint. And we have been constantly working with the NWA to correct the issues there, to as much as possible, to put in place measures to alleviate the discomfort of the residents. But, Madam Speaker, I want to bring one point to the nation's attention. When we decided to do the South Coast Road Improvement Project, the original conception of the project was that it would have been an entirely new alignment, likely not to impact the communities that existed along the whole alignment on the coast. We took the decision that if we're going to do this massive investment, the communities that exist along the coast should benefit. And therefore, we moved the alignments to match closely the existing alignments for the benefit of the communities. And that benefit will come in the form of, for example, we have ensured that the new road alignment pipes are laid. So that is going to bring reliable and sufficient water supply into the parishes of St. Thomas and Woodland. So when we are saying we are building a road, the public is just believing that it is laying off the asphalt. No. We have put in significant civil works for drainage. We have put in pipes, which is a significant cost. And in areas we have laid provisions for fiber optic cables and so on in some areas. So, Madam Speaker, this is a nation-building exercise. And the complaints of the residents, well taken, well understood. We ask you to pardon our progress. Madam Speaker, it is now coming to the end of the year and hopefully the end of the Atlantic hurricane season. It is customary for us to engage in 3 rounds of mitigation efforts over the hurricane seasons. At the start, over this hurricane season, at the start of the hurricane season in June, at the peak of the hurricane season in August, September, and at the end of the season, November, December. This year will be no different. The NWA will again be coordinating the activities on behalf of the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. The NWA will be the lead agency, but the NSWMA also plays a role in this iteration of the mitigation efforts. The government will be allocating $21 million to each constituency for this year's program of work. Madam Speaker,
Prime Minister,
this
Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's time for speaking has expired. House Leader.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister's time. The Prime Minister's time having expired, Madam Speaker, I beg to move that his time be extended by 5 minutes in order for him to complete his presentation. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
The question is that the Prime Minister's time be extended for 5 minutes to allow for completion of efficient time to complete this presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
No, Madam Speaker, last year I believe the allocation was 16. I think it was 16 million last year. We have decided to increase it this year because we hear the cry of the people regarding their roads, right? Now I know that most, if not everyone inside here would have loved to see a bigger spend, but we are still under serious fiscal pressure, and therefore whatever allocations we make and priorities we make, it is balancing against all other needs. So, Madam Speaker, consistent with our approach last year, which I believe worked well, we will be doing the following. Each constituency, as I've said, will be allocated a sum of 21 million, and it will be divided as follows. 1, road rehabilitation, $10 million. No allocation from this year will be allowed as usual. However, a maximum of $5 million may be reallocated from other areas for road rehabilitation. So, in other words, up to $15 million may be spent on road rehabilitation. Just to be clear, this is not to do a new road. This is rehabilitation, which includes patching. Right? So this gives the Member of Parliament the ability to respond to urgent areas where the national agencies' budget may not stretch or they may not have the capacity to reach. It gives us, but I do say here, Madam Speaker, in defense of the MPs, that when the public hears $21 million and $15 million, immediately expectations rise to levels that are unreasonable. Madam Speaker, $21 million is unlikely to be able to repair even one road. Right? This is just to ensure that communities that would not have got the attention of the parish council or the attention of the NWA or any other entity responsible for their maintenance, that the Member of Parliament has some capacity, but the Member of Parliament will not be able to repair all roads. I think I have a duty to say that. Madam Speaker, debushing is now $5 million. But, Madam Speaker, up to $4 million of this amount may be reallocated to other areas. So MPs have the flexibility, because in some areas there is no bush. It's just roadway. In rural areas, I have driven on some roads where the trees have taken over the road. So MPs can have flexibility, right? Madam Speaker, just to be clear, debushing must be done along a road thoroughfare. So, Madam Speaker, we are not going to approve any program where the debushing is off a thoroughfare. The public must be able to see and the impact of debushing. Right? So the NWA has been given strict instructions. So when you are preparing your work program, ensure that the debushing is, I didn't say a main road. It is connected to a thoroughfare. All right? I think that's very reasonable. Yes. So the minimum amount that a constituency can spend on debushing would be $1 million. And I will say, Madam Speaker, that for drain cleaning, the allocation this year is $1 million. But you can, if you choose, reallocate from elsewhere $1 million into drain cleaning. The amount is less this year because there was an allocation already made for $1 million, very close to this announcement. So it would have been unreasonable to put more on that. Madam Speaker, garbage collection. This is a sore point. And I am not pleased. I myself, Madam Speaker, feel very embarrassed actually to see the level of garbage that is in public spaces. And Madam Speaker, it is of great concern to the government. We have made allocations for 50 new trucks, which are on the high seas as we speak. Further allocations will be made to bring in new more new trucks to increase our capacity to collect. But the real problem is that we have a system of garbage collection, municipal waste management, Madam Speaker, that needs a total re-engineering. And we are well down the wicket with an entirely new system which will see the divestment of garbage collection to bring in private participation in that, to develop a sanitary landfill, to close 2 of our landfills. Well, they're not really landfills, they are really dumps, but to close Retirement and Riverton, and to build a waste-to-energy plant. And all of that, Madam Speaker, is being worked on. In a few months, I will come to the Parliament and give an update when it is mature. The member from Western St. Andrew, I believe they have met with you. You're aware of the plans and how it is progressing. But I'm even in lieu of that, Madam Speaker, even acknowledging that a new plan is close to fruition, I'm still not satisfied. I'm still very much concerned about the level of municipal waste that we see on our streets. And whilst I'll be the first to say it is not just about collection, it is also about how citizens choose to dispose. But in this debate, we have to be clear that, and say to the public, that we are not satisfied with how we have been collecting municipal waste. And there's not something that we can debate about. We just have to say what the truth is and seek to improve on this. So, Madam Speaker, we have allocated $5 million to the MPs, to the constituencies. A maximum of $2 million can be reallocated from this area, but I encourage members of Parliament not to do the reallocation, but to spend the $5 million on cleaning up as much as you can your constituency. I know in my constituency we have housing schemes, and those schemes, Madam Speaker, they are not the beneficiary of regular garbage collection like many other urban centres, and the garbage piles up. Now is an opportunity to send in the trucks and do a proper cleaning. There are open lots that people use as dump areas. Now is the time to send in the trucks and maybe some tractors and do a proper cleaning. As much as you can. As much as you can. I agree with the leader of the opposition. It does come back, but the problem is you can't let it stay there. You can't let it pile up. So let's use this opportunity to clean up, right? This $5 million. I'm not saying that this can clean everywhere in a constituency, but MPs, I'm sure, will pick the most sensitive points, the critical points, and make the cleanup. So in all, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to say that the program so far, since we have started this, has worked very well. I think most members of Parliament are satisfied with how the allocations are made and how the program is structured and the benefits that their constituents get. I want to close, Madam Speaker, on a point that has been of concern to this House. We are always concerned when we announce projects like these, programs like these, which requires the involvement of MPs in mobilizing labor, selecting infrastructure for repairs, monitoring the implementation of those repairs, undertake quality control, and then ensure payment to workers. Madam Speaker, this has stretched the role of the MP from legislator to work supervisor to social worker to inspector of civil works. It's a dangerous thing, Madam Speaker. Now, I've heard the complaint of MPs for greater funds to be allocated to MP-driven programs like CDF. Now, as an MP myself, I understand and I am sympathetic that the current allocations, Madam Speaker, are not sufficient. However, the point that we have to consider, however, even if we were to triple the current allocation, it would not quench the demands that exist. So, Madam Speaker, and what it would do if we were to increase it that much is to further increase the expectations. So, Madam Speaker, I want to be clear that it is not the intention of the government to inadvertently replace the functions of ministries, agencies, and departments in the provision of public services and civil works. The solution actually is to make government more efficient and to grow your economy so you can expand your budget so that the agencies that have the responsibility can actually do their work. Right now, MPs are standing in the breach of the inability of government to offer full service. But, Madam Speaker, there is one more point that we have to pay attention to. That as you call for more resources for your discretion to be directed, MPs are increasingly exposed in this new environment. Exposed to accusations of corruption and nepotism and cronyism. So, Madam Speaker, as we call for the ability to direct public funds even greater, there has to be greater balance to protect MPs who inevitably become exposed. To administer a program like this, MPs will have to make recommendations about labor, recommendations about contractors, and inadvertently you could get caught in being accused. So, Madam Speaker, I'm raising it here because there is an organic call for greater funds, that MPs should have greater resources. But I'm also trying to balance it in this parliament that the greater resources that come to you is the greater exposure that comes to you and the greater risk. And as legislators, we cannot inadvertently change the nature of our government without understanding what the consequence of that change would be. MPs are not ministries. And though we have, in a way, we are duplicitous because we like to be able to satisfy some of the demands because it gives us some political clout and power and advantage, but in the long run, this is not how Jamaica should be run. This is not the way. It is not my pleasure to come here and say we are going to make these special allocations so that MPs can resist the political avalanche that is out there of the citizens being upset. This is not how it should be. So while I'm doing this, I want to be clear, Madam Speaker, that my focus is about getting the economy right, increasing government the civil bureaucracy, meaning our civil service, our entities, so that they can provide the service. Madam Speaker, I've been doing this for 25 years, and Christmas is never, you know, for MPs, Christmas is not a happy time. People don't understand this. Christmas is not a happy time because you have to make sure that everybody gets something. And no matter how you try and divide that cake, somebody's going to be upset. Madam Speaker, this is not how I want to leave Jamaica. It should never have happened. It should never reach that stage. But it is what it is. But we intend to change it. Madam Speaker, so one of the things that we have been examining, and as I close in respect, yeah, but I know the MPs need to hear and want to hear and agree. What I think we want to do, Madam Speaker, and one of the reasons why we have announced so early, is that we have to figure out a way to ensure that when the allocations are made, that the bulk of it gets to the people. And we are looking at, Madam Speaker, using our new digital currency, digital payments, as to how that can be integrated in this. We haven't finalized a solution. I have asked on this side if there are constituencies who would want to volunteer a division, for example, that we could do a test case. Leader of the opposition, I'd make the offer as well. If you know, a test case could be offered, we could see if we could change it. Right? So, Madam Speaker, I won't go any further. I think we have made the points, and I thank you and the House for your forbearance in the presentation.
Opposition Leader.
Madam Speaker, thank the Prime Minister for his statement setting out the cost of the damage from the tropical storm Ian, and also announcing this allocation of $21 million per constituency for road rehabilitation and debushing, drain cleaning and garbage collection. The issue of garbage collection is particularly egregious and has been for some time, and we've been hearing about the 50 trucks. We look forward to them arriving and being deployed. In the meantime, Jamaica is in an extremely dirty state, and I said during a previous presentation that the proliferation of dump sites seems to be the main growth industry in the country, because everywhere you turn, place is just covered in garbage. It's unsightly, it's insanitary, it's a danger to public health, and something needs to be done to solve it. And management is a key aspect of that, as is providing sufficient resources for management to do the work. Prime Minister, I hear what you say about the fact that it saddens you to have MPs having to play this role as sort of mini-ministries in their constituencies. I agree with you that the way in which our politics and our governance has evolved over time, MPs have to be or find themselves involved in a range of activities involving things which really are the role of government or local government, whether it be dealing with problems to do with roads, problems to do with street lights, problems to do with back-to-school assistance, Christmas work programs, all of these things which just really reinforce the culture of patronage in our politics. And the resources are never sufficient for everybody who ought to get a benefit. So necessarily, some are favored over others. And that always causes contention in the constituency. As much as some of us may try to spread the resources as broadly and fairly as possible, it is of necessity a process which lends itself to disappointment among those who don't get and who are deserving, and indeed cynicism towards the whole dissemination of public goods through the political process. I hear the Prime Minister saying that it's an intention to eliminate this, and I'd like to see that happen myself. We do, however, seem to be going in the wrong direction, because the amounts that are being provided seem to grow. Many of us will be glad for this, because, as has been said, there's tremendous pressures on us to respond, because the state is not responding. Many of our communities, the NWA or the other agencies will never come in there and fix roads, or very rarely, and the roads are in a terrible condition with the amount of rain we've been having and so on. So being able to respond to that and do some rehabilitation or repair is obviously something that any representative would want to be in a position to do. But having said that, it really represents a failure on the part of the state to execute basic functions in an efficient way. And, I don't think anybody in here would disagree with the idea that we need to improve the delivery of service by the state, so that members of parliament aren't service providers of basic public goods, but are rather lobbyists for their constituents in this parliament and among state agencies, and providers of information to their constituents as to how to access whatever goods and services the state will provide. So I don't think there's any disagreement in principle on this, only to say that we don't appear to be heading in the direction that we both think we ought to be going in this regard. Minister, on the specifics of this 21 million, I would just ask if you could be clear on the time frame within which we will be expected to provide whatever information needs to be provided to access the funding, and how quickly after that must we complete the works in order to access the funding. I know sometimes we are given this in a very truncated period of time, where all of a sudden, we have to be providing information by a deadline which is often unrealistic and doesn't allow for a kind of orderly assessment of where the best deployment of the limited resources may be. But given that we're not in the Christmas period or the heights of it yet, there would seem to be some time that we could at least be afforded a reasonable time frame for preparation and execution. So if you could give some clarity around the time frames for this, I would appreciate it greatly. And also, if you can give an indication as to when, we may have done this already, but I didn't hear, when the 50 trucks will be deployed in the system, the 50 garbage trucks, and how they will be deployed. What is on what basis will they be made available? Because, certainly many of our constituencies which are involved with high density populations and so on are underserved terribly when it comes to garbage collection, because the amount of waste that is generated in a constituency which has dense populations in a relatively small space is far greater than what is generated in other areas of the country where people have more space and is more spread out. So the need for those services to be provided at a scale commensurate with the population of those areas is a very real issue, which is not presently being addressed. So any information on 50 trucks, when and how they will be deployed, we would be grateful for.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. By Friday of this week, members of Parliament should receive their letters of instruction and letters of request with directions as to how you should structure the programs. You probably will get them before Friday, but Friday is the latest. It would mean that upon receiving them, you would make contact with your NWA office, one that serves your constituency, and you would begin scoping your programs. And once that is complete, then you would send in your program to the officer. I would suggest that you have your program in by mid to the third week of November. The earlier, the better. And work should begin as soon as your program is approved. I don't think that will take very long. Yeah. So So I would say that you should be looking to start your work by end of November, first week in December. Yeah. You want to finish early. So you want to have, because you want to have at least now a week for approvals and check generation. So this is why we have started early and give you enough lead time to get your projects in. All right. Now, just to be clear, the $15 million doesn't have to be spent before Christmas. Right? That's the road. The $10 million or maximum 15. We normally allow MPs to take a little time and figure out exactly what you're going to do, but you have to be finished by the end of February with that $10 million. For the others, we would like you to be complete in the projects for Christmas. All right, so the drain cleaning, the debushing, and the garbage collection, they must be complete by the second week in December. The second week in December, you're late if that is the case. So those would be the timeline. I think now we have given sufficient time in terms of notice for everybody to comply with the requirements of the NWA and the NSWA. The NSWA, important to note that fees, the NWA charges a fee. They are an executive agency and they have to finance their staff, but the government will pay the fee. So the fee will not be an account to the constituency allocation. So you get what is allocated is what you get. So that's full. The NSWMA has raised issues, as I transition to answer your other question, that members of parliament have not been forthcoming with the requirements that are necessary. The NSWMA, solid waste, they have complained that that MPs have not been forthcoming with the documentation required. For example, the bills for trucks and these kinds of things, which they require in order to be compliant with the accounting regulation. They have complained. But this allocation, yes, because so I'm giving notice that if you are not compliant, you will not get paid. I think I have to say it publicly, because the agency is always at risk of an audit query. So I have to be very clear on that. If you have not submitted the documentation, you will not get paid. Madam Speaker, the trucks should arrive by mid-November, the middle of this month. I had an informal conversation with the head of NSWMA, and he gave me some indication as to how the trucks will be distributed. The trucks will be distributed according to the various regions that they have. So all regions will be covered. I can't tell you parish by parish what that is. Equitably distributed, and I believe the NSWMA will hold 2 or 3 trucks in reserve for their special response program that they have. But the trucks will be island-wide in terms of their distribution.
Madam Speaker, let me thank the Leader of the Opposition. But I want to just say to the Prime Minister, we are on this side, we're happy for the increase. But, you know...
Member, please stick to asking questions in this segment.
But I'm the spokesperson, Madam Speaker.
I believe you had abdicated your role to the opposition leader. Because, I will give you the leeway.
That's a greater role, Madam Speaker. I'm just a humble servant.
All right. No, go ahead. But I really did believe that you had given your time to the leader of the opposition. Go ahead, Member.
Member Warmington. Cry. Through you, Madam Speaker, Prime Minister, what you ended with in the matter of MPs being contractors and things, and I don't want it to be left out there that MPs are the ones that are giving out the work, because there are constituents that will hear us speaking here, hear this amount, and think that we are the ones who are actually giving out the work. We are actually the one who who is distributing the money, but that there's an agency for each of the allocation that is given. In the instance of the solid waste, it will be National Solid Waste that is the agency that is monitoring, that is ensuring that the contractors are doing the work and will make payment. In the case of the debushing and the patching, that it is not a matter where small contractors that are just free to, there are contractors who are registered, who are NCC and TCC compliant, and that the drain cleaning be inspected by the National Works Agency before, well, has to be inspected before, photos taken, and for the payment, photos taken again, examination of the work done, and once the National Works Agency is satisfied that the payments are made.
Yeah, good point, good point.
So I just want to put that out there in supporting your point. But I also want you to look at how we have reached here, Prime Minister. And I don't think that the request from the members in the House for additional resources is because we want, or I can speak for myself and the members on my side, that we actually want resources for ourselves as in the CDF, more resources. But it is because there's a system that is broken. And as you rightfully say, if the agencies are working effectively and efficiently, then we wouldn't ask for more resources. But I want to look at road maintenance, Prime Minister, because the allocation that you're giving at the end of the year is because of the shortfall that takes place in the rest of the year. And I want you to look at, as I've repeated in the House before, look at what we spend on mitigation at the beginning of the hurricane season. I don't want it to seem also that the $10 million that we're getting is enough to fix some of those roads that have not been fixed in years because of the lack of an effective and efficient program, Prime Minister. I mean, I was in my constituency last week and I had to defend you because a constituent took me on and said, tell the Prime Minister that I named this hole after him, a pothole after you, because it has been there for a while, but I can't tell him when a program will even come his way to fix that pothole. And it's something that we have to look at, Prime Minister. The $3 billion or under $4 billion that's given for road maintenance in the budget is woefully inadequate with the climate conditions that we are seeing now. There are many rural roads, and I can speak of rural as a rural MP, that have outlived its lifespan. That no matter how much time you patch it, as rainfall another set of pothole comes. And that's why I'm saying, Prime Minister, seriously, we have to look at a dedicated in the road maintenance. I know the Minister of Finance doesn't believe in dedicated funds. But look it up, Prime Minister, every other economy in the world that has a proper road maintenance program has a dedicated fund in dealing with road maintenance. We can't continue the way that we are now. Otherwise, we will become insignificant to our constituents. And the cost of rehabilitating these roads later down is one that the country will not be able to bear. So I'm asking you seriously to look in the next budget cycle at how it is that we deal with road maintenance. Prime Minister, this $889 million that you have here dealing with the tropical storm Ian, I am sure is on top of a sum that was not found in dealing with disasters years ago. Yeah?
Correct.
And I know that we're trying to do as much as we can. But again, there are some roads that have passed proper driving conditions that are not NWA roads, but municipal council roads. That, because we as MP, the only time we get money that we can spend on municipal roads is in December. $10 million. Right? Well, the NWA gets on our behalf. It's only in December. So what happens the rest of the year? Again, Prime Minister, I'm asking on behalf of the rural MPs on this side, because I don't know if they dealing with debushing. Dealing with debushing. Prime Minister, I was fortunate enough, as you know, to get a program to bush a road, that road from Oxford to Troy. The cost of debushing that road was $3 million plus. That's one road in northwest Manchester. So to get $5 million to debush a constituency of the size, there are many communities I can say no, that will not even get touched this cycle around. And it is a serious matter what is happening out there because of the rain conditions that we have been having over the past few months to years. So I'm asking again, Prime Minister, while you look at this road maintenance, there has to be some mechanism in constant debushing. It doesn't have to be every month, every year, or every month or every 2 months, but even every 6 months, something that makes sense, that the taxpayers don't look at us and say, you're a waste of time, because no matter what you say, nothing will happen. We are happy for the development that is happening, but don't forget rural Jamaica. The interior of the country is crying out for some maintenance work, Prime Minister. So even though we have this increase, we appreciate it, but it is not one that I can say, Prime Minister, that at the end of the day, that we are even satisfying a quarter of what is required to be done. I, as a member of Parliament, don't need the resources, but we want the agencies to be efficient and effective and equity across the board for every member of Parliament. You have a member of Parliament on your side that's bawling. I went into a particular constituency on Tuesday.
Member, the time for members speaking has long expired.
Prime Minister, just on the matter of... Yes.
No. So...
I'm just going to, on the matter that the leader of the opposition ended with. Yeah. Because I didn't get a clear answer in what the leader of the opposition had asked. When we get the letter on Friday, the latest Friday, the start date, because normally we start the work in the beginning of December. But for larger constituencies, what ends up happening is that after all the verification is done, payments are being made even on Christmas Eve, which makes it very hard for us as MPs and for the constituents and the contractors. Seeing that you're announcing it much earlier, if we can just get a specific start date in that letter, sooner than the end of November.
Sorry, I think I may have...
Sure.
All right, to start where you ended, the start date that I indicated would have been the outside start date. The earlier you send in your project, then the earlier you get an approval to start, right? But we are saying that all projects should begin the latest the end of November. So that would be somebody who is very late in submitting their project. Now, in terms of payments, you know, I have been in difficult situations as an MP where, you know, you recognize that if people don't get paid for Christmas, you could have a riot. You could have a riot on your hands. So I don't think the rest of Jamaica understands the trepidation that MPs live in. Just to ensure that your payments are made. And MPs, and I'm supporting what you have said, it is not the MP who is the contractor. It is not the MP who is giving out the work. But sometimes the MP has to stand up beside the contractor, look over what the contractor is doing, so that the work gets done to standard, so that it can get passed. And then, you know, I have pity for the NWA because they will tell you that their phone rings off the hook, calling, when are the checks ready? When are the checks ready? And I'm not comfortable that this is the right way for us to be doing the public's business, right? So the question is, the leader of the opposition is saying we seem to be giving more, but at the same time saying we shouldn't be giving more. And, you know, the member from Northwest Manchester is saying we appreciate it, but how are you going to change? So I don't want to extend this debate. It's a good debate, but just to give you some insights into the thinking of the government.
Just the last question. Last time, when just similar topic, and you mentioned the Troy Bridge, Prime Minister. 28th.
I don't have an update.
28th of last month. Still haven't heard anything on when it is that you're coming to visit. You made a promise.
I will visit.
And the reason why I raise it is that they heard your offer, and I've been asked daily on when it is that you're coming.
Thank you. Prime
Just
Minister.
to quickly answer, Madam Speaker. I do intend to visit. I have gotten a report on the Troy Bridge. I know that they are advanced in their procurement. So very, very shortly, within, I would say, before the first week in December, I should make my way to Troy. All right. Now, and I'm hoping that the NWA has heard that date, and my permanent secretary is here, so the outside time, PS, you will ensure that. So, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, just very quickly. The government's policy is not to have dedicated resources. It is better for the central management of the Treasury to allocate resources as needed. The truth is we have had some dedicated funds before, but the problem is that it's not just badly managed, it's just not enough. So you still end up having to allocate from central Treasury to the road maintenance. But, Madam Speaker, to be clear, I had said it before, Jamaica once had the second most roads per square miles in the world. Only Japan had more roads than us. That has changed, obviously, but we're still very high in terms of our road density. What it means, Madam Speaker, is that we have more roads in Jamaica that, first of all, all of them may not be carrying the volume of traffic, or carry you to areas where, it's a reality. So our register of roads need to be, first of all, we need to rationalize our register of roads. That's clear. Secondly, Madam Speaker, the definition of a road 30 years ago in Jamaica is not the same definition as a road today. Our road infrastructure is very old. So, Madam Speaker, we have roads that were built, some of them 100 years ago, 150 years ago, when the standards for building them were not as the standards we expect today. So not everything that we classify as a road is actually a road. It doesn't have drainage. It's not built with camber. There are no culverts. Precisely. So, Madam Speaker, we have to go and rationalize our roads. That's one. Thirdly, there has to be a program where we identify right throughout Jamaica, with the assistance of the MPs, the priority roads that need to be addressed. And we give ourselves a 10-year time span that we would be able to address them, because I have to be realistic and practical and honest to the people. We will not be able to fix all the roads that exist. Now, what I've said to the Ministry of Finance and what we have discussed is that in the next budget, in the same way we have made allocations for the main thoroughfares and the new roads, we will have to consider a special allocation. I can't tell you how much it will be now. It's when the budget is being created. And at that point, we will include, of course, the MPs in making a determination as to, in assisting the NWA, because it is the NWA really that should point out these roads. And then we will start now to have an impact on making improvements to our road. I am acknowledging that our road conditions are not the best at this. Well, it has been for a long time, but we are making the effort now to try and correct it. So we ask the public to be understanding of the situation. We are in the best position ever to be able to address some of it. And that when I say that, it is because we have resolved the fiscal situation and we continue to manage it well. We are seeing some signs of growth, and that now means that we can make some allocations that are meaningful to rehabilitate our roads, particularly our rural and secondary roads. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Continuing with statement by ministers, Minister Tufton.
Madam Speaker, with your permission, Minister, just to urge members to appreciate that it is now after 6, and we do have a healthy agenda to complete before we go. So we would urge that the greatest economy of time be exercised in responding to the statement by Minister, which indeed, if you should recall, is perhaps the longest period a statement by Minister segment of the order paper has had for a long time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks to my colleagues for. Madam Speaker, I now take the opportunity to update the Honourable House on the emergent issue of increasing respiratory illness that have led to overcrowding at the Bustamante Hospital for Children and at the Spanish Town Hospital. Madam Speaker, our epidemiological surveillance system has indicated that Jamaica is in the influenza season. This is evidenced by the fact that severe acute respiratory illness, SARI, have passed the seasonal threshold. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw between 19 and 21 SARI admissions each week at the 6 SARI Centennial sites across all health regions. These sites are Cornwall Regional, Mandeville Regional, St. Anne's Bay, Kingston Public, University Hospital, and Bustamante Hospital for Children. In the 4 weeks from September 25th to October 22nd, the number of SARI admissions increased from 4 to 19 which represents a more than 400% increase in the reported admissions at the Centennial sites. The increased, Madam Speaker, SARI admissions are mainly among children, and in particular children younger than 6 months old and those 2 to 4 years old. Over the last 2 weeks, admissions were significantly greater than usually observed. Whereas the Bustamante Hospital for Children would usually admit 4 SARI cases per week at this time of year, in the last few weeks they have admitted approximately 13 children of SARI in each week. So that's an exponential increase, Madam Speaker. This has resulted in an increased number of cases of SARI admissions to the Bustamante Hospital for Children. It is to be noted at the heights of the COVID-19 pandemic during 2021, the highest admission at that time of year was 9 per week. So we're now doing 13 per week, which significantly demonstrates the challenges that we face. This year, the current admission is 44% above what we saw during COVID-19 2021. Our current report from the Bustamante Hospital for Children is that medical wards are above capacity at 111%. Additionally, there are at least an average of 6 patients in the accident and emergency department who are awaiting admissions nightly, and this has worsened our current staffing challenges and has significantly impacted work environment within the facility. Of note, Madam Speaker, is that Spanish Town Hospital, as I indicated earlier, is also seeing a significant increase in admissions and overcrowding. Over the weekend, the pediatric numbers indicate that there were 35 admissions, with another 15 children awaiting admission in accident and emergency. The occupancy of the pediatric ward has been persistently at greater than 100%, Madam Speaker. The general pediatric ward admission increased by 53%, with 98 patients in August and 150 in September. And over the last 4 weeks, there have been a significant increase in the daily pediatric respiratory asthmatic cases at that particular institution. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Health and Wellness has taken note of the international trends in respiratory illnesses, especially among children. As the Minister of Health and Wellness, I wish to draw the attention of this Honourable House and the people of Jamaica to the observed increase in cases of respiratory illness in the region of the Americas. A substantial increase in cases have been noted in the United States and Canada, including the respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV for short. RSV is a common respiratory virus that usually causes mild flu-like symptoms, and most people recover within a week. However, it may cause serious illnesses, especially in young children and the elderly, who may be affected by bronchitis, which is an inflammation of the airways in the lung, and pneumonia, which is an infection of the lung. It may also worsen chronic lung disease, such as asthma. As at the week ending October 15th, increased RSV activity was recorded in the U.S., where each year there is an estimated 58 to 80,000 hospitalizations among children younger than 5 years old, and 100 to 300 deaths. Also in the U.S. this flu season, the overall rate of RSV-associated hospitalization has been highest among those 6 to 11 months old. This is for context, Madam Speaker, what is happening to our neighbors. Based on this international situation, the technical team of the Ministry of Health and Wellness has begun the work to assess whether or not our current